everyone, it's Katie from Paradise Falls family. In this short video, we're covering our weekend break to Paris in January 2025, staying at the InterContinental Champs-Elysees. This was only a fly-in visit, so it won't cover everything that Paris has to offer, but we'll cover some of the main sites as well as some extra tips from our previous trips to Paris. Our most recent trip came about mainly because we had a free night to use at an InterContinental hotel as part of our IHG Ambassador Club membership. We love our membership, which for an annual fee gets you loads of perks within the IHG group and most notably gets you a free night at an InterContinental hotel when staying 2 nights or more over a weekend. Last year we put this to use as part of our New York trip. This year, it didn't fit with any of our existing plans, but we didn't want it to go to waste, so it came down to a weekend in London or elsewhere in Europe. We found it was actually cheaper for us to fly to Paris from Manchester for the weekend than to get a train down to London, so we decided to go for it, meaning we'd also be doing our first trip abroad without the kids. We flew out on a Friday night after work with EasyJet for just £150 for the two of us, landing at Charles de Gaulle Airport. From there it was easy to hop on the train into the city centre and then take the metro directly to our hotel. There are actually 2 InterContinental hotels in Paris, Le Grand and the Champs-Elysees. The latter was slightly cheaper, so went for this one and with our offer got 2 nights for around £450. The Champs-Elysees hotel isn't actually located on the Champs-Elysees itself, but it's very close, just 1 street back and just a 2-minute walk. It's also just a couple of minutes from the Arc de Triomphe, and this was the metro station we used most frequently, but there are a couple of stations within a short walking distance. It's a lovely location and really handy for exploring the city. Having stayed at several InterContinental hotels before, we were quite surprised at how small this one was. It was almost like a boutique hotel and had a very unique feel that we really liked. We were greeted at reception with excellent service as usual and shown to our room on the first floor. The corridors are pretty small and the hotel generally has quite a cosy feel to it. We knew our room would be small, given we'd booked a cosy room, but it had really high ceilings, so it had a really nice feeling to it. Although it was small, with it just being the 2 of us with next to no luggage, this wasn't a problem and it was a really lovely room. The bathroom was again very small and a bit more basic than you usually get in InterContinentals. The shower was over the bath, which was different as you normally get a standalone shower, but there really wasn't room and it was fine for the weekend. We did like that the hairdryer provided was a Dyson one though, not something you usually see. We were given some welcome gifts, a small bottle of champagne and chocolates, which was a nice touch. We didn't notice any noise from outside or within the hotel, which was also really impressive as there was quite a lively restaurant and bar downstairs. We didn't get a chance to try the restaurant properly, but because of our Ambassador Club status, we got some free drinks vouchers and enjoyed these in the bar, which was really good. With only having a day and a half in the city, we knew we couldn't see everything, so we picked just a couple of things to do. We mainly planned a night out on the Saturday night at the Moulin Rouge, with a bit of sightseeing either side. We started on Saturday morning by wandering down to the Place du Trocadero, opposite the Eiffel Tower. This was only about a 20-minute walk and lovely on a Saturday morning. The Trocadero offers some of the best views of the tower, and it's somewhere we'd always planned to stop but never found the time. It is very busy and very touristy as you might expect, but you can get some great photos from here. It's then just a short walk over the river to the Eiffel Tower itself, where we'd booked to go up. Again, this is something we'd only ever done as children, so wanted to give it another try. There are different tickets you can buy on the official website, going up to different levels using the stairs or elevators. Unfortunately, the very top was shut for renovations, so we had to settle for the second floor, which in actual fact is about halfway up. Tickets to this floor with the elevator cost €23 per person and give you a timed entry ticket. The area beneath the tower is gated, but your tickets get you access, and there are a couple of shops and food stands at the base of the tower. We grabbed a quick lunch here while we waited for our entry time, which was at around midday. It's not the best food and was very expensive though, so we'd recommend finding somewhere else if you can. The elevator only had a short queue, so just took a minute or two to head on up. It was fairly crowded at the top, but not too bad, and we were able to enjoy the views across Paris and treated ourselves to some macarons. Again, there's a little shop here, as well as the Jules Verne restaurant, which is Michelin starred. And if you head down to the first floor, there's a slightly less fancy option of the Madame Brasserie. This is also where you can find the glass floor if you fancy testing your nerves. At night, the tower is lit up beautifully and sparkles for 5 minutes every hour on the hour, until around midnight, give or take a little depending on the season. We didn't catch this properly this time, but it's something we'd like to see one day. So after some time enjoying the views, we headed down and hopped on the metro to our next stop by Notre Dame. A quick word on the metro. We found this really useful to get around the city, with the different lines providing really good coverage, and we use this almost exclusively to get around. Having said that, we did find some of the stations and trains weren't particularly well kept or clean, and it did feel a little bit grotty in places. Also, we found the ticketing system really frustrating. I think the city was in the middle of transitioning to a new system, so on Friday and Saturday we had to buy individual paper tickets for every trip, which was really cumbersome. But then on Sunday this option was no longer available, and we had to buy a travel card and load money onto this. This actually seems like a much better option, but the stations didn't all seem to be offering the same ticketing system, which was really frustrating. It also isn't great value if you're just here for the day and need to shell out for a travel card you might only use once. So basically just check this out before you travel so you know what you're doing, and hopefully you'll have a smoother experience than we did. Moving on to Notre Dame. This is somewhere we've never actually visited inside. We did come here many years ago when the kids were little and before the fire, and we got some really lovely photos outside. This time we wanted to take a look inside, but with it only recently reopening, there's a timed ticketing system in place. It seems like these are only released a few hours before, and we never actually found there to be any availability. We'd hoped there might be some last minute availability or some kind of walk-up system, but regardless, we knew we at least wanted to see the outside of the church. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to get any tickets, but the queues outside for entry were absolutely massive, and I'm not sure we'd have wanted to wait anyway. If you are planning to visit, make sure you've planned ahead and understand the ticketing system and have plenty of time set aside for your visit. We decided to then head back to the Champs-Elysees to do a bit of shopping. The Champs-Elysees is a lovely tree-lined avenue running from the Arc de Triomphe right down to the Place de la Concorde, with shops on either side. A lot of this is fairly high-end, so we did some window shopping and then headed back to the hotel nearby to get ready for our night out. We'd pre-booked dinner at Le Moulin de la Galette at the recommendation of our hotel. This is located in the Montmartre area of Paris, very close to the Moulin Rouge and Sacré-Cœur. Our plan was to eat and then wander through the little streets, visit the Sacré-Cœur before heading on to the Moulin Rouge. Unfortunately, the weather had other ideas and it absolutely poured down all night. So in the end, we just had a few more drinks with dinner and headed straight to the Moulin Rouge afterwards. Dinner was lovely, and the restaurant was very nice and cosy, located in an old windmill, so a really nice, quirky location. The service and food were excellent, and we had a really nice meal. I think the only downside was that they weren't great for allergies. They basically said that the allergy option was the steak. Not the end of the world for Greg, but not something that would suit everyone. Still, the food was great and we had a really nice meal. We'd pre-booked our tickets to the Moulin Rouge show directly on their website. We only booked a few weeks before and struggled to find availability, so keep in mind you do need to book a little further in advance. We're aware this is a slightly more adult show and not necessarily appropriate for kids, so we hadn't seen it before and we thought we'd give it a try given it's such an iconic show. We booked the package without dinner, but it included a bottle of champagne. It wasn't cheap and cost us €416 in total. This package also meant that we were seated towards the back of the theatre, which was laid out with dining tables across the main floor, some tiered seating, again with tables at the back of the room. It's a relatively small space with lots of people crammed in, so I have to say it wasn't particularly comfortable. We had to share a small table with two other couples, which wasn't really what we were expecting, and given that you're crammed in together, it's quite difficult to turn your chair and view the show comfortably. Anyway, at least we had a decent view for the show from our table, which lasted around 1.5 hours with no intermission. We weren't too sure what to expect going in, and to be honest, we did find the show to be really bizarre. We weren't allowed to film any of the show, and it's quite hard to describe, but it's largely a series of seemingly unconnected, cheesy scenes with topless dancers, mixed in with some quite impressive gymnastics and acrobats, and even a scene with a mermaid in a pool. You didn't know what was coming next. In one scene, everyone would be dressed as Egyptians. The next scene, they became clowns, and so on. We found it to be very Eurovision-like and completely off the wall. It was a fun experience to see the show for ourselves and a nice night out, but we definitely wouldn't rush back. I would describe the show as something similar to shows we'd seen before at Butlins, but with everyone performing topless. So I think if you do go, make sure your expectations are aligned with this, because ours definitely weren't. There is a minimum recommended age of 6 years old, and we did see a few children there, although to be honest, we wouldn't really recommend it for children. There was nothing too bad for them, but we just don't think they would particularly enjoy it. In terms of dress code, it was fairly relaxed. A lot of people did get dressed up, but we were fine in smart casual, and some others were in trainers and jeans, for example. On reflection, it absolutely wasn't worth the money that we paid for the tickets. With it still pouring down with rain, we headed back for the night, and were up the next morning to spend our last half day in the city. For the morning, we'd booked tickets to the Catacombs. This was something we've always fancied trying, but didn't think the kids would enjoy it while they were little. The Catacombs are basically a network of old mining tunnels running underneath Paris, which are now home to the remains of millions of people, and you can now tour them. We pre-booked time tickets online for €31 each, and then got the metro out to the south of the city at Denfert-Rochereau. Something to note is they only allow small bags inside and there are no lockers available, which is understandable given it's a fairly small space, but it was a pain for us as we'd planned to have our bags, but we had to leave everything at our hotel and then pop back later on to pick them up. The suggested duration of the visit is about 45 minutes, and it consists of a 1.5 kilometre walk through a section of the underground tunnels, with just over 100 stairs down and then back up again at either end. You're given a free audio guide which leads you through the walk, and it's absolutely fascinating. The first section focuses on the tunnels themselves, and then the second part focuses on the burials here and the stacks of bones and skulls. So I'd say this isn't really something for the squeamish or the claustrophobic, but otherwise it's absolutely fascinating and we really enjoyed the tour. It's something completely different and a side to Paris you don't really think about. We'd really recommend this if you're in the city and have time. We then had just a couple of hours left before we needed to head to the airport, so we picked up our bags and then jumped on the metro to the Galeries Lafayette in the centre of Paris. This is basically a giant department store, but it's absolutely beautiful inside, with a giant central dome that you'll have no doubt seen in pictures. The shopping here is amazing, if a little high-end, but we wanted to just have a wander around and see it for ourselves. It's quite difficult to get a good picture of the space, as the inner railings are generally taken up with counters and stands, but there are a few little gaps you can pop into for a picture, and they also have a glass walkway which you can go out on for proper pictures. This requires a time ticket which you can reserve for free online. We didn't have time for this as it was all booked up within the next half hour, but you can quickly book this on the day if you have more time than we do. As well as this, you can even go up onto the rooftop and see the views out across the city, and in particular the Palais Garnier, which is the opera house just over the road. So it's a bit of a sightseeing destination in itself, as well as a shopping centre. It also has a brilliant cafe which offers a range of food and loads of seating, so we stopped here for a quick lunch before we left for the airport. Our plan was then to get on the metro out to Orly Airport, but unfortunately the line was shut that weekend, which we didn't realise until the last minute, and so we had to find an Uber pretty quick to get us to the airport on time for our flight back, getting back home before the kids went to bed on Sunday evening. We'd had a lovely break in Paris, and although it was pretty short, we thought it was good value and certainly something we'd consider doing again. So now, before I end the vlog, I'll briefly cover a few more things you can do in Paris that we've enjoyed previously. Apologies for the lack of videos here, but bear with us. First off was the Arc de Triomphe. This was very close to where we were staying, so we saw this frequently at the top of the Champs-Elysees. You can get some great pictures here just on your way to the metro station. However, you can also go to the top of the building as well. We did this on our last visit years ago, and it's a really cool, different way to see it, and the views of the city are brilliant. These days it costs €16 for admission, which feels fairly pricey given you can go up the Eiffel Tower for €23, but we still really enjoyed it when we went up last time. When we last visited, we stayed down near the Louvre and Notre Dame in the Novotel Les Halles. We can't remember too much about the hotel, which meant that it was probably fine and did the job in a great location for exploring the city and walking over to the Ile de la Cité, where Notre Dame and Sainte-Chapelle are located. This is a lovely area to wander around the old streets and see some of the best sights in the city. It's also a good spot to take a river cruise from, which we really enjoyed in the past too. Of course, we also visited the Louvre while we were here. We're not usually into art museums, but the Louvre is kind of a must-do and was fantastic. We saw the Mona Lisa and remembered the Napoleon apartments being particularly interesting too. From here, you can walk through the Jardin des Tuileries to the Place de la Concorde and all the way up the Champs-Elysees. It's a lot further than you expect, so it takes a while to walk, but it's a really nice walk and you see so many of the big sights. In the gardens, we also made a stop at the Musée de l'Orangerie, which has a huge version of Monet's water lilies, and it's worth the visit for this alone. Then just over the river, there's also Musée de d'Orsay, which we also made a stop in. There's of course loads more to Paris and so much more to do and see. It's a city we love coming back to and really enjoyed our weekend here, which is so doable from the UK. If there's anything you want to ask about our trip, then please just ask away in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a like as it really makes a big difference to the channel. Next week we'll be starting our next vlog series covering our trip to Thailand, so make sure to subscribe to the channel to catch that. Thank you all so much for watching.